Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Serissa japonica. It's styled to look like an African Acacia tree, those trees you see out in the plains of Africa with the nice flat top umbrella canopies. I was just inside looking on the computer at pictures of acacia trees, and there's so many different varieties or styles of them. Some of them have very flat tops. Some of them have flat tops in layers. Some are very sparse, the foliage. Others are very rounded and full. So there's so many variations and species, and it depends on the growing conditions and the wildlife in the area. And so last time I was styling this tree, I was styling it in that Pierneef style. Pierneef is a South African painter, and he painted them with sort of a rounded canopy, and then the foliage pads followed the curvature of the canopy. So a very thin, rounded canopy. And I'll show you some pictures of that. So that was my intended style for the tree, that rounded canopy with the foliage pads on the angle following the curvature of the canopy. I'm always questioning my style on this tree. How should I style it? So I took a picture of the tree this morning and I brought it into GIMP, a photo editing software that's free online. And I tried out some variations on the tree, going from a very rounded canopy to a less rounded canopy to a flatter canopy to a triangular shaped canopy. And I tried a lot of variations, and I think I'm on the right track with the wide rounded canopy. Every style would look good on the tree. It would look very natural, but I think as far as maybe a compromise between a really full dense acacia and a sparse one is to get that rounded canopy with the thin foliage pads on it. I think it's a good, I guess if you put all the pictures of acacia trees into a computer and it came out with an average of all of them, maybe you would get something like how I'm going to style this tree today. I also played around with the placement of the tree in the pot. I moved it over towards the left-hand side a bit, and if I move it too far to the left, it looked, you would have to get rid of the rocks and the zebra. It just looked, everything was on this side of the pot. So I just moved it a little bit, and that seemed to work quite well. So only about kind of that distance, or maybe even a little less than that. So I don't think it's too far out right now. It could be moved to the left just a little bit. I usually use the long bladed scissors, the blue scissors, and I come in and prune the profile of the canopy. If you did it individually with little bonsai shears, it would be very difficult to get that overall shape established. You would have to clip, stand back, clip, stand back, clip, stand back, and it would be a process that might take you the entire day. So the blue scissors comes in and establishes that shape right away. It's very quick, and it just, you cut through everything. It's a fairly brutal operation, but it definitely gets that basic shape established. So that's what I'll be doing first. Before I begin with the blue scissors, I'm going to clean them and sharpen them, just to make sure they're nice and sharp for cutting through the upper canopy. To clean the blue scissors, I spray them with soap and water. The same soap and water I use for treating insects on the trees, just to get any sap off of the blades that might gum them up. So that's good. Now I'll get my sharpening stone and just touch up the blades on them. The stone I'm using is a water stone. It's 4000 grit. It's a very, very fine stone. It says to soak the stone in water for 3 minutes before you use it, and then I'll use it to just lightly sharpen the blades. So I'll soak it for 3 minutes in a bucket of water. My stone has been soaking in the bucket of water So here it is, it's fully saturated. So what I'm going to do is the flat edge of the blade first. So I just run the flat edge of the stone across the blade, giving a little more pressure at the cutting edge, but keeping the flat part of the blade flat. And you can see it turning brown as it takes the metal off. I'll do the same for the other blade, soaking my stone. And you can see it takes any sap off that's hardened on. Like that. So both edges are quite good now. Just take a little more of that sap off here. Okay. Now I'll do the beveled cutting edge. So that's here. And I match my angle. And you can kind of feel it by drag. You can look for the shiny surface where you're removing metal. So you want to just try and touch that cutting edge up. That's looking really good. Now I'll do my other side. Keeping water on the stone. Otherwise the stone clogs up. The water takes the metal particles out so your stone doesn't clog up. You can feel how sharp it is by dragging your finger across it. So it's getting quite sharp. So I think that's good. I think my scissors are nice and sharp, sap-free, ready to prune up the Serissa. I've got my cutting goals in mind, the shape I want to prune the canopy. My tools are nice and sharp. I'm ready to go. I've let the Serissa grow quite long. Some of the shoots have extended quite a bit. They're getting very vigorous. So it's a good time to prune it back. You want the tree to gain vigor, then prune it back. So here I go. I want to keep the height fairly tall in the middle here and then round down. So I'm going to start by pruning the center, some of the long shoots first. The scissors are cutting really, really well. So I'm just going across flat at the moment, kind of equalizing that growth on the top. Like that. Then I'll begin rounding the profile each side, left and right. So I'll be rotating it so I can see the front of the tree. So I'm going to round down. And you can see why these blue scissors are so good, because they're long and you can get nice smooth curves with it. There's that beautiful Serissa smell, which doesn't smell good. So on the edges of the canopy, I'm coming to quite a point. So I don't want a thick edge at the edge here. I want it to be thin. So I'm going to start rounding the other side now. Then I need to step back and have a look. So here's the front view of the tree. You can see I'm getting that profile. Now I refine it, trim any long shoots sticking up out of the profile. Like that. Do the same for the other side. So that's looking quite good now. So next, I want to go to the side view. From the side view, I'm going to have less curvature. It's going to be flatter. And that'll allow me to get a thin foliage pad from the front. If I round it too much at the front, I'll get a thicker foliage pad in the front view. So I'm going to keep it quite flat in this view. So here I go. Again, I'm starting at the center and I'm just slightly rounding it out. So you can see the round shape now from the side view. It's kind of flatter, but still rounded slightly. Come in a little more here. And some at the back here. Get all my clippings out of the canopy here. Okay, now I'm going back to the front view, just double checking everything's looking good, and it is. So on this edge, on the left hand side, I've got some long shoots on the corner, so I'm going to prune them back, getting them in the profile. I'm a little thick here. There's a few shoots sticking up here. So I've got my front view profile, you can see it there. My side view is looking better. I'll go to the other side. Here's the back of the tree. I'm also going to prune a bit from the back view just to smooth out my curvature. And then I'm going to my other side view. Again, flattening out a bit. Something like that. I'm a little high at the back here. Checking it from all angles now. That looks good. Front view is looking quite good. I could maybe thin my edges out a little more. In both views. It's looking better. So some branches are getting fairly hard pruning, others are just a light trim. So now I'm double checking all the views again, or triple checking. These scissors are really sharp. It's cutting really, really well. It makes the job a lot easier when you have sharp scissors. Okay, and now I've got all my views looking good. So now I have to go to the top view and look down and trim my oval shape. Here's my top view of the tree. So I'm a little thick out the back here, so I'll trim it off. Profile pruning to the oval shape. Here I'm too long. Here I'm too long, trimming that back. And sometimes I start in the top view and prune the oval shape before I do the front and the side views, but it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so there's it in the sun now. I'm still a little heavy on this side here. Ooh, some thick branches there. That's looking better. I have a weak branch here that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but we'll deal with that today. So I think that's looking good. Now I've got to go back to my front view and just quadruple check everything's looking good. Here is a look at the tree now. It's looking very even and pruned. A little bit more there, a little bit more here. So I pruned it quite symmetrically. It's a little lower on this side than this side. And that's up to you. You can, if you look at the reference photos of acacias, there's some that have, they're very asymmetrical, very high on one side, tapering. There's a lot of different variations. So all are acceptable because you see them in nature. Asymmetry, symmetry. So I'm styling mine fairly symmetrical. Let's say I'm a little high here. I'll take this back. I've got some low branches here. So the next step is to get branch separation. I'm after a thin foliage layer, but I also want a bit of branch separation. And I may have to hard prune some of the branches out of the structure to get some holes or some separation in the canopy. I don't want it to look like topiary, where it's just pruned to a perfect curve with no branch layering, no branch pads or anything. I want it to be, well, natural looking. Now some acacias are very full like this. You don't see any holes or separation of branches, but I want some separation. I've been working towards that for many years, so I'll continue on that route. To get the branch separation, what I do is I come underneath and I find each branch. You can see it wiggling there, and you can see how it's interfering with the branches beside it. I want space around each branch, so I'll then come in and prune them back so I have some space in between all the branches. And it's always difficult to do because you're cutting off foliage to create a more compact branch pad. So for this one, I'm looking in the front view. And I want these pads fairly flat. So even though it's pruned to a rounded shape now, I now want these pads to be flat within this canopy. So I'm going to prune some of these back. They're getting too tall. Prune some shoots off. Picking my best branches, getting rid of the ones that aren't so good. And this is where you can clean up all your stubs and that from the profile pruning. You can come in and be selective, cleaning up the structure. I think this is going to come off here. So sometimes pruning away some fairly major branches, and I'm looking for flow lines, branches that flow out from the center of the tree, removing sort of vertical ones in favor of flowing branches. So I think that's pretty well got the styling. Now underneath this branch, let me show you that. Underneath this branch I have some back budding. Now I have to decide, do I want branches to come out? Do I want new branches? or do I just want to develop what I have? My idea is to get a thin layer of foliage on top, so I don't really want branches down in the structure down here. So a lot of these I'll prune away, like that one. This one on the inside will get pruned away. I don't want that growing there. There's one here that could be developed out as a branch. Do I need a branch in this area? Not really, so I'm going to prune it away. Cleaning up the foliage underneath the canopy so it makes my layer thinner and more shallow. Up here in the top view, you can see the branch has more room around it. I can wiggle it around before it interferes with the other sections. I could prune this one off here, and I will, giving it even more room. I could prune this one pointing to the inside off here, like that. Clean up some stubs here, which is a never-ending process. Take this off here, a little congestion there. Just cleaning up each branch. There's a new shoot on the inside here. I'll prune it back. So that one is pruned up. This little branch now has room to wiggle before it hits all the other branches. There's a yellow leaf I'll take off there. Yeah, so that's pruned up. So I'll do the same for all the other branches. So the next one I'm wiggling is here. You can see there's a little bit interference on this side. Some branches here are growing out across that branch, so I'll take that one out. So right here, I'll remove it totally, like that. Prune this one back. Prune this one back. So now you can see this branch has a little more room. And there's some foliage down lower on it that I'll need to remove also. In the lower view, you can see the foliage that's low down here. I don't want foliage down here. Again, I want that thin canopy. Now there's one shoot coming out here which would be kind of nice to fill this area in, so I'm going to leave that one. But this one I certainly don't need. So occasionally, you know, I'll leave a shoot that I want to develop into a branch. So this branch will develop out the front here, and I'll strip off all the lower leaves on it once it reaches the right length. So that branch is now pruned up. This one is now pruned up. I'll just remove a leaf here. It's interfering. And it gives separation to the branches. So I'll have to go through all my branches and do the same process of wiggling the branch, checking for interference, and pruning it up to get some pad separation or some branch separation. And I find it makes the tree look more miniature when you get these branch layers or foliage pads. It breaks up the canopy and makes it look even more miniature. My next branch I'm wiggling is here. So I'm going to prune this back so it doesn't grow over top of the branch beside it. I'm pruning this back, it's starting to grow over the branch beside it. This one needs pruning back. That one. Now I'm looking for flow lines, checking branches that are awkward looking. This one can come off. Now the structure on acacias usually isn't graceful and flowing. So if you have kinks in the branches, it's actually more acacia-like. So I'm keeping that in mind when I'm pruning. I'm not, you know, trying to get this beautiful flowing branch structure. I'm getting more compact and angular branches growing in the direction I want. I don't want it smooth and flowing. So clip and grow is really, really good for this type of operation where you want your branches to kind of, well, look natural and twist around. Stripping off some of these lower leaves down here. So this branch has room now to wiggle around. I still have a little bit of interference here. I can resolve that by pruning this back. Like that. And I could even prune this one back. I will. Like that. So now I have space between 3 branches. When I wiggle them, I don't have interference with the branches beside them. So next is my weak branch. Now this branch is interesting. It grew very poorly last year, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to remove it, even though it kind of fills in the canopy here. But then this year I've noticed on some areas I'm getting strong growth on it. Not all areas, like it's very weak back here, but out at the tip here it's very, very strong, the growth. And here, so it's definitely getting sap flow to the branch. So maybe it just had insects on it or something. So I'm not going to get rid of it yet, even though it's a weak branch. It's getting lots of light here. So I'll just leave it for now and see what happens. I will prune the tip off here. This tip can come off there, so giving that branch lots of light. If I have another really weak year of growth on this branch, well then I'll consider pruning it right off and growing a new branch out to replace it. But for now, it's doing okay. There's a branch growing back in on the tree here, and it's very, very weak. I'm going to take it off, giving more strength to the branches that I want to keep. I'll also take this one off. It's very awkward looking. Taking some dead tips off the ends of the branches. Okay, I've got a little branch in here I need to prune up. Again, so it has room and light. If I want to keep that, now let me see. So if this weak branch does die off, this will replace it. This branch here, it'll extend out. So it's important to keep that one. From the front view now, you can see the areas I've worked in are getting a little bit of space around them. I'll keep working away on the tree. This detailed pruning takes a long time. It may take me several hours, maybe 2, maybe even 3 hours to get all the branches detailed and pruned up so they have space around them. So here I go. And some of these branches are getting quite thick out here, so I'm looking for thinner branches to prune to. Keeping the branches light as they get towards the edges of the canopies. With this nice sunny weather in the greenhouse here, it really feels like I'm on the African savanna. It's also important that every branch has light, so you can see if I wiggle this one, there's no branches from here overlapping this branch, and this branch isn't overlapping these branches. And it's very important because if a branch doesn't get light, it just dies. So you don't want branches from your apex here growing over top of this layer, over top of this layer. You want each one of these branches to have full sunlight when viewed from above. Here is a good example of tip replacement. You can see this branch comes out, and this end here is really thick, and I have a thinner branch coming here. So I'll take off the thick part, leaving a bit of a stub, like that. So I'm replacing that thick end of the branch with a thinner, more delicate tip. So you always have to watch for that. If the branches are getting too thick near the edges of the canopies, prune them back hard and grow a new branch out to replace it. I have finished round 1 of the pruning. So it's looking good from the front view. I'm really happy with it. If I come up top now, you can see how much less dense it is. You can see the branch structure, you can see the ground down below. So I'm doing the wiggle test on each of the branches, you know, just giving them a wiggle, making sure each branch has some separation, and they're pretty good. I had to do a lot of pruning. Like, look at all the, I took a lot off. And, you know, occasionally some fairly thick branches, but it's looking quite nice. It's a lot more airy looking. There's less overlapping branches. Yeah, it's a big improvement for the tree. So next, I have to come in. I've got some suckers coming up from the root base. There's even one out here by the rock. So I've got to prune those up, clean up my landscape. I'll come in with my tweezers and just start blowing and cleaning up the landscape of all this debris. I have got the landscape all cleaned up. So you can see there's some natural moss growing on the soil, which looks really nice. It gives more of a rainy season image rather than a dry season. So you can see the suckers that have grown up from the roots here. So it would be very easy to create a forest from a single tree with a Serissa. They just sprout up from the roots all the time. So I'll prune those off. I'm coming in now, pruning these suckers off the roots. There goes one, another one here. There's a little one in here. A little one here. Like that. And then I've got some way out here. So that one comes off. This one comes off back here. And right here. I've got a couple. Like that. So that takes care of all these little suckers growing up. Cleans up the root base quite nicely. Let's step back now and have a look at the tree, see how it's looking. Here's a look at the tree. So here is the front view. I'm rotating around to the right-hand side, going around to the back, going around to the left-hand side, and back to the front. I'm taking a critical look at the tree now. So one thing that I could maybe improve is getting my pads more defined with more space between them. It's getting there. The pad creation is becoming easier each time I prune it. The pads are getting more and more defined. Each branch that forms the pad is thickening up, and yeah, I'm definitely sorting the branch structure out. I did a lot of sorting in the upper part today of crossing branches and branches growing inwards, and just sort of getting the flow of the branches a little nice. It naturally does sort out itself a bit. I mean, branches that grow in the shade get weak and they die off, and branches that grow up towards the light get strong and grow healthy. But yeah, I think it's looking good. I could shift it over in the pot just a little bit. I think would make it look even better. But that'll be for next repotting, which it's not due yet. It's only been in this pot, I think, for a year, maybe a year and a half. Yeah, so that's my Acacia style Serissa, all pruned up. Every tree on my channel has a playlist, and I'll put a link to the playlist for this tree in the description below. So you can go on the playlist, go back to the first video, go through the videos and see all the steps and all the work I did on the tree from 10 years ago to how it looks today. And that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.